Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Bill Wright. He's the Senior Director for North American Government Affairs at Splunk. Bill, good to have you with us.
Good to be here, Tom. Thank you.
And I want to dig right into this, the idea of digital transformation for the military, no less than for the civilian side of government. Everybody talks about the benefits of it and what we can do there, but there are a lot of challenges. So why don't we start with the challenges? Because I think when we address those, then we'll have a better chance of success. What do you see from the Splunk standpoint as the main challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that question. I think all too often we discuss the benefits without the proper dose of reality. And the fact is, digital transformation is hard. It's hard, but it's necessary. And the DoD stands at a critical juncture where we're adopting cloud capabilities, and doing it at speed and at scale is essential if we are as a nation are going to maintain our military advantage. I would say that managing a multi-cloud hybrid landscape is probably at the top of the list for our defense partners. In today's complex world of distributed services and microservice-based applications, it's really imperative that organizations like DoD cut through the noise of their multi-cloud hybrid environments so that they're able to detect, so that they're able to troubleshoot and eliminate those incidences quickly. And perhaps most relevant, at this moment in time, in the heightened threat environment is security. So it's difficult to secure a multi-cloud environment. It's due to a number of reasons: lack of visibility across all of your different platforms. There are more services to monitor and secure, more potential points of failure and unpredictability, more data across an expanded attack surface, and more tools. What this causes is data silos and blind spots between systems. And of course, an adversary can find exploitable vulnerabilities across the architecture that were perhaps overlooked by those managing it. So initial misconfigurations across architecture during the setup can also add to this complexity. For the foreseeable future, defense agencies will maintain a large on-premises estate, which also has to be managed and have visibility across cloud services. So you add to that this transient, ephemeral nature of many modern cloud services like serverless technologies, microservices, and the challenges of the modern cloud transformation really aren't trivial. There are also a number of what I would call non-technical challenges that DoD and our other federal partners are facing. It's probably not a surprise to anyone watching today, but there's a global competition for tech talent. This competition exists in the private sector, but I think it's probably even more acute in the federal government. And of course, Department of Defense isn't immune from that pressure either. Today, DoD is probably not optimally postured to compete with industry in hiring the large numbers of experienced top-tier talent that they're going to need to build and deploy cloud across the Department of Defense. As a result, I think there needs to be a prioritization, maybe educating and training the department's really incredible, diverse, and talented workforce so that they can deliver on cloud capabilities at scale across the department. And Tom, I think I'd go a step further. As a subset of IT and cybersecurity, I think is data. I think data and data sciences will play an increasing role in everything we do in society, in most professional occupations, that I think everyone will need to develop at least some basis, fundamental level of understanding around data and how to use it. Government agencies, especially Department of Defense, are creating more data than ever before, and all too often maybe fail to capitalize on the valuable information that they're collecting and can be gleaned from this data. The Department of Defense will need to unlock the power of data to truly modernize their IT infrastructure and enhance security. And to do that, they'll need the proper tools, they'll need the proper workforce to make that happen.
And let me just ask you about one point you mentioned early on here, and that is the noise of
Sure.
multi-cloud environments. What is the nature of that noise, and how can you drown it out or end it?
Yeah, thanks. From a security lens, that would be the correlation between different disparate data sources is crucial to reducing noise and allowing you to see what's actually going on in your systems. You can also use techniques like risk-based alerting. This really does cut through the noise and only alert your operators for an advanced detection and threat hunting. Then I'd say from an IT operations lens, the noise can really be considered signals to be listened to, but we as humans can't actually go through all of that. So Splunk, for instance, uses machine learning and enables the human to make sense out of those noisy signals and spot the issues before they become outages.
And you described a environment that agencies operate in, especially DoD agencies. And probably we should talk about the fact that sometimes these capabilities need to be invoked and their applications invoked in kinetic situations. It's not something you can necessarily take weeks to fix. But with respect to this complexity, I guess managing it really has two parts. One is the management of it, but maybe initial to that is discovering everything that you have and knowing what it is you have to manage. So maybe
Yeah.
talk about how you manage, starting with making sure you're not leaving anything out of the management domain there.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. It's visibility is just so important. So, how can this level of data, this amount of data and complexity really be managed? Unfortunately, the reality is that I think few organizations first ask themselves, how can we secure and monitor our technology before they make those very big strategic technology decisions and investments? Properly managing multi-cloud complexity, as you say, visibility and transparency are really fundamental to any modern digital environment. And that's where the end-to-end visibility becomes so important. So gaining visibility across all of your platforms, among other things, visibility allows you to quickly identify vulnerabilities and then more quickly and better respond to threats. Real-time visibility and contextual insights, enable organizations like the Department of Defense to look into the future a bit and better predict what's going to happen next. This kind of visibility and control across any environment, as you can imagine, is very powerful. And because cloud deployments, function differently across different environments, it's important to monitor the health of your resources in the appropriate business context. This monitoring is necessary whether those resources are in the public domain or whether they are in private clouds or public clouds. As I'm sure you know, the Department of Defense recently launched a new cybersecurity initiative that will allow continuous monitoring of cloud systems. I think this is very important. This document calls for continuous authorization to operate, ATO, which is an improvement upon the risk management framework that was sort of its predecessor. What continuous authorization to operate does is allows DoD to engage in real-time monitoring of cyber risk, which is a great step from being on a passive footing to a more proactive approach to cybersecurity, which is really where we need to be as our cyber threat landscape really grows by the day.
And the implication there is that the data that you need to manage for security is not simply what is thrown off by the particular systems themselves. You almost have to have an environmental view, it sounds like, to be able to manage this properly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The data coming off all of your systems has value across different areas, whether that's IT operations or cybersecurity or just the business operations of the actual function. So all of that data can be important, and it's like we said in the earlier conversation, really cutting through that noise and getting to that data that's most important is really what Splunk's all about.
We're speaking with Bill Wright. He's Senior Director for North American Government Affairs at Splunk. All right, we've outlined some of the complexities, some of the challenges here for digital transformation, but there's a goal here. So talk about some of the benefits, again, in the DoD context, to transitioning here to a more digital and more aware type of operating from an IT sense.
Yeah, so great question. We hear a lot about the benefits, and the truth is the benefits are pretty numerous and certainly far outweigh any of the challenges that I just mentioned. What we're hearing from our customers, including DoD, is that they're always looking for three things: flexibility, agility, cost savings. And that, in a nutshell, is the value proposition of a multi-cloud strategy. There's no doubt about it in the current environment where we all have the pressure for fiscal restraint, and to be good stewards of our tax dollars, especially right now when agencies as of today are still living under a continuing resolution, and the path to our FY22 appropriations is still a little bit unsettled. So I think it's more important than ever to ensure that costs don't get out of hand as agencies embark on this IT modernization journey. And there are a number of ways that a cloud strategy can ensure cost savings. A cogent, well thought out cloud strategy will allow you to move quickly, be adaptive, innovate faster. I think we saw a lot of this during the early days of the pandemic. Those agencies that leveraged cloud fared far better, scaling and staying up and available for citizen services. You can gain more granular transparency into costs, usage, and capacity to minimize those operational cloud costs. And perhaps most importantly, you can reduce the downtime. You can detect, investigate, you can resolve those issues, those technical issues quickly. And this will, of course, lead to shorter and fewer outages. And in the case of Department of Defense, as you can imagine, with their national security mandate, this is extraordinarily important. It can also be much more difficult for an adversary to take down digital services if those services are distributed across multiple clouds. With this multi-cloud strategy, you can have cloud in reserve as a fallback position if primary clouds are taken down. Again, that kind of redundancy, that kind of resilience. Resilience is increasingly important, especially in this current global threat environment.
Yeah, so in some ways, the cloud and having a multi-cloud environment mimics, in some sense, from the telex days, which that was the style of international communications DoD used at one time. It wasn't telex, but it looked like that in a secure, proprietary wiring system. But they had multiple channels of wiring to the same terminals throughout, so that they had redundancy. Expensive, hard to switch, hard to update, hard to change. Whereas you really have agility in a multi-cloud environment.
You're dating yourself, Tom, but yes, I think that is an apt comparison. Creating those redundancies and being able to be, move quickly and be adaptive is really the key going forward.
And cloud migration has good benefits from a purely IT standpoint in managing your infrastructure, but maybe tie it for us to digital transformation, because in theory, you could do that maybe without the cloud. I don't see quite how is agilely, but somehow the two are tied together. Maybe draw that connection for us.
Yeah, I think it's an absolutely essential step in the IT modernization journey. Especially in today's complex world, distributed services, organizations like DoD need to employ the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud environment to gain that kind of agility and remaining nimble that we saw early on in the pandemic.
And let's go back to the security question again, because in some ways, security is a virtue you need to have no matter where your systems are or what they are. But you could also look at it as greater security and greater assurance is itself a piece of modernization. That is to say, modernized means a much more up-to-date, contemporary, agile, and safer security environment. Fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. This digital transformation doesn't just help with your IT portion. It also helps with the overall security. You are getting more data than we've ever had before. We like to say here at Splunk, all data is important. All data can be security related data. So being able to parse through those mounds and mounds of data looking for those security relevant pieces is getting easier by the day.
And let's talk about the human capital question there. You mentioned that earlier on, and that you need different skills, different people, and so forth. How are IT skills required changing, both in the security sense, but also in the larger digital transformation sense?
Yeah, Tom, I think that it's no surprise there is a competition for good IT tech talent out there. I think that it has now moved toward those that can deliver and deliver at scale cloud capabilities. And so we've seen a little bit of an evolution around there. I think that in particular, the government has a pretty acute problem competing for resources, for workforce resources. I think the private sector has probably had a little more success in recruiting and retaining this tech. So I hope that government agencies, and including the Department of Defense, really rely on the private sector for for a lot of their needs, and so that we can continue to partner. We're all on the same team here, and all want the same outcomes.
It seems like one transformation we're seeing across DoD is the return of uniformed people writing applications and doing coding.
Yeah.
Unlike maybe the past years, what they're doing is writing the very functions they need at the highest application level, and maybe leaving to vendors a lot of the utility type of work, such as security measures and the containerization and all of those things that apply across the applications. So maybe the roles are changing, no less critical vendors and the government, but different buckets that they deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's correct I think that's right to a degree. There is so much innovation going on in the commercial space, not just here at Splunk, but among the tech community. I think that our government would be best served by taking advantage of those investments and using commercial off-the-shelf software rather than trying to develop their own in many ways. I think that the savings and the security that have come from the investments that private sector is making in commercial software would far outweigh any savings that it would take for the government to start coding and producing their own software.
And maybe talk about, again, this is kind of a Splunk idea here, but idea of data integration, because in the same vein we've been speaking, many applications use a common base of data for different purposes. And applications generating data for their own use can be useful to another application. And that's true both in security and in also visibility and accountability. So maybe address the idea of how data integration is a key part as the data itself grows for all of these applications.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all data can be, for instance, security related data. So as applications are, producing this data, you can't have it stovepipe just to the IT shop or just to the security shop. It's really becoming more and more important to have that data integrated so that your security folks can use that IT ops data just as much as your IT ops data can use some of the stuff coming off the security applications, because sometimes you don't know what you're looking for on the security side, and sharing that across the field, or integrating that across different portions of your organization, is where you could really find that golden nugget of data.
And how ready is the cloud industry for really deep DoD requirements? And by the same token, how ready are the application providers in the cloud also ready for this? Because when you think about the levels of security needed, DoD almost starts at the CUI level, where a lot of civilian agencies leave off, and then gets into the ultra secret, super sensitive in the national security sense. Are we there yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. In particular at DoD, the top need is going to be around data and security. They need the right infrastructure. in place to create, execute, and scale. It's our belief that a cloud-centric strategy is going to be imperative to do that. So fortunately, as you mentioned, last September, Splunk received the Department of Defense Impact Level 5, IO5 provision authorization for Splunk Cloud, which I think further validates not just Splunk's commitment, but industry's commitment to helping the Defense Department. I think that the goodwill among industry is so high right now that that pursuing these higher levels of Impact Level 5 or authorizations down the road will continue.
All right. Any final thoughts on modernization, transformation, multi-cloud strategy? We've covered a lot of ground here.
We did. We've covered a lot of ground. I guess I would just leave you with this. The top needs around IT modernization are for data and security. Having that right infrastructure in place that can create, that can execute and scale in this digital landscape today. It's our belief that this cloud-centric strategy is going to be imperative to meet the full benefits of digital transformation. And as I mentioned, Splunk is there as a partner and received our DoD Impact Level 5 provisional authorization for Splunk Cloud, which again, I think validates our commitment. And then lastly, I think I'd say, Tom, our strategy is only as good as the funding behind it. So from an industry perspective, we're here to help. We're here to be that trusted partner. So to the degree that we can be provided budget transparency, brought into the fold, that will help us plan for and to help DoD meet its requirements.
Bill Wright is the Senior Director for North American Government Affairs at Splunk. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated.
And I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more of the DoD Cloud Exchange.